In 1968, in the small town of Delray Beach, Florida, Kelly and Michael had recently become husband and wife. Both grew up in modest families, so the main factor in choosing a home was affordability. Their search for the perfect house was becoming increasingly exhausting. Often, they were offered either a beautiful house at too high a price or something cheaper in an undesirable neighborhood or in need of major repairs. Meanwhile, Kelly found out she was expecting a baby, but they still hadn't secured a home of their own. So when their realtor scheduled another viewing, Kelly and Michael were ready to buy the house almost without hesitation. There wasn't much time left before the baby was due. During the viewing, it turned out that the house had some plumbing issues, but these could be quickly fixed by hiring a professional. Kelly was thrilled with the house. It was small, single-story, with a cozy attic that could be converted into an additional room. The low price didn't scare them since they didn't have significant savings. Without much deliberation, they agreed to the deal and bought the house at the corner of two streets. The repairs went smoothly, and the first few months after the move were peaceful. Kelly gave birth to a healthy and beautiful son. However, as winter approached, strange things began happening in the house. It all started with minor oddities. At first, there was an inexplicable knocking sound in the pipes, usually beginning when Kelly prepared formula for her son. Initially, she didn't pay much attention to it, but when the knocking became more frequent, Kelly decided to tell Michael about it. He thoroughly inspected the house, including the attic and basement, but found nothing suspicious. To be sure, Michael called a professional to recheck the plumbing system, thinking there might be an issue with the water pressure. The technician did find a minor fault and fixed it. After that, the knocking stopped, but only for a short while. Shortly thereafter, Kelly and Michael's son, Davy, began to get sick. At first, the symptoms were mild: lethargy, nausea, and increased irritability. The child became pale and didn't want to play. Kelly and Michael took him to the doctor several times, but no obvious cause for his deteriorating condition could be found. One day, Davy suddenly had a nosebleed. Kelly called an ambulance, and the child was taken to the hospital. After examinations, the doctors didn't find anything serious and explained that nosebleeds in young children are quite common. They were then sent home. Soon after, the knocking in the pipes resumed, and another visit from the technician again yielded no results. Since Michael often worked late, Kelly became increasingly afraid to stay home alone with the baby. She found any excuse to go out in the town, spending as little time in the house as possible. The strange knocking continued to disturb her, and Davy's condition remained unstable, sometimes improving, but then worsening again. However, the child's health generally kept declining, which deeply worried Kelly. Eventually, Kelly began to notice the same symptoms in herself as in her son: weakness, dizziness, fluctuations in blood pressure, and even nausea. She started to realize that something terrifying was happening, and she believed the cause was hidden within the house itself. Kelly shared her fears with Michael, claiming that she thought the house was haunted. However, Michael just laughed, dismissing it as nonsense and not taking her concerns seriously. Meanwhile, Kelly's condition continued to worsen, as did little Davy's health. One day, Michael suggested they take a weekend trip to the mountains to relax and get a break. The trip turned out to be wonderful, and the family returned home in good spirits. But when they entered the house, they were met with a strange sight. Fruit that had been left on the table was scattered across the floor. Kelly was shocked and now certain that there were indeed ghosts in the house trying to drive them away. Michael, however, remained calm and tried to assess the situation rationally. He concluded that someone must have broken into the house during their absence and called the police. While waiting for the police, Michael inspected the house himself to check if anything was missing. He discovered that one of Kelly's small earrings, which he had once given her as a gift, was gone. The police arrived quickly, but after inspecting the house, they found no signs of forced entry through doors or windows. Although they opened a burglary case, the officers noted that the chances of finding the culprit were slim, as it was a minor theft, and similar incidents happened up to 20 times a day. Kelly, however, was convinced that there had been no break-in. She continued to believe that the house was haunted by spirits that didn't want them living there. That night, little Davy's condition suddenly worsened again. He had another nosebleed, and soon Kelly began to bleed as well. The knocking in the pipes continued intermittently, adding to the tension. As a result, Michael decided to take time off work to spend more time with his family. However, After a few days, he too began to experience the same symptoms. Michael himself started to consider that there might be something supernatural going on, though he was still reluctant to believe it. Meanwhile, Kelly and the baby repeatedly sought medical help, but their condition only deteriorated further. Feeling desperate, Kelly decided to take extreme measures and started inviting psychics and fortune tellers, hoping they could expel the spirits from the house. Unfortunately, these people often turned out to be frauds who only reinforced her belief in the supernatural. They charged large sums for their services and assured Kelly that everything would soon be fine. However, none of the many psychics who visited their home could help, and the situation only worsened. In the end, Davy's condition became critical, and he was urgently hospitalized. Soon after, Kelly was also admitted to the hospital as her health had become catastrophic. Tragically, the worst happened. First, little Davy passed away, and shortly after learning of his death, Kelly too could not bear it and died. Michael was in despair, devastated by grief. He had lost everything he had, and his life was completely shattered. During the autopsy of Kelly and Davy, experts discovered that their bodies had been continuously exposed to a toxic substance, which was the cause of their deaths. Since technology at that time was not as advanced, the police investigating the case did not immediately understand what was happening. Michael's condition suddenly began to deteriorate rapidly, which prompted the police to act immediately. They needed to find out what had caused the deaths of the residents of this mysterious house. Experts who came to examine the house conducted numerous tests and studies, carefully inspecting every nook and cranny. Eventually, they made an unexpected discovery. Behind the baseboard in the corner of a room, there was a small hole, resembling the entrance to a mouse nest. When one of the experts shined a flashlight inside, he saw many small objects that had obviously been dragged there by the mice. Among them was the earring that had belonged to Kelly. Suddenly, everything became clear to Michael. The missing items, the constant knocking in the pipes, the scattered fruit, these were all the work of the mice. It turned out that there were quite a few of them. However, the main mystery remained unsolved. What was actually killing the residents of this house? The police turned to one of the most renowned detectives in the city. Mr. Melson carefully studied all the case materials, the autopsy results, and the condition of the house itself. He spent a lot of time researching medical literature and chemical manuals until he was finally able to piece everything together. Mr. Melson urgently summoned the experts for a re-examination of the house and ordered an analysis for mercury. Laboratory tests revealed that the furniture and objects in the house contained dangerously high concentrations of mercury. Everything became clear. A certain amount of mercury had been scattered in various places throughout the house. While the concentration of this substance was not lethal for short-term exposure, prolonged residence in the house led to fatal consequences. This was the cause of the deteriorating health of Kelly and her child, Davy. The police, along with the experts, spent a long time searching for the source of the mercury and eventually discovered that it had been poured between the wallpaper and the wall in the living room and bedroom. As it turned out, several residents had died in this house before. Because of this, it had a bad reputation, and no one dared to buy it, with local residents avoiding it altogether. After the tragedy, Michael decided to sell the house and move away. The new owners, who were told the entire story, were not frightened, as the mercury had been completely neutralized and the mice exterminated.